The Magpies can win the flag. Ross the Boss has rediscovered his Midas touch and the Lions open with bruise-free football. Hello and welcome to a blockbuster episode of Fox Sports Lab AFL. I'm Ben Dixon, your host, and joining me to rip into round 2 of this season, Hawthorn champion Jason Dunstall and stats guru Paton. Welcome, boys.
Dicko, wasn't a great start last week, so we need to bounce back.
Oh, I can see the energy, and that is because we've got a massive show coming up. But before we get into round 2 matches, we're going to take a look back at round 1 and see what stoked Jason Dunstall's fire. It's time for Dunstall's Don't Argue segment. Now, I love when you get angry. It's actually therapeutic for me. So what set you off this weekend?
A couple of things. I've got to be honest. Players bumping, it just shows low footy IQ. Surely they've worked out that if you bump, you're in all sorts of trouble, particularly if you've got another option. Now, I get it. If 2 players are running for the same ball side by side and you want to bump, that's fine. But if one bloke's got the ball, why on earth would you bump him instead of tackling him, Dicko? You're just going to get suspended. And I heard Taylor Adams saying, the players need to look after each other. Well, someone's not getting the memo. These blokes are poleaxing each other. And we don't want Buddy missing a week. I want to see him out there every week. So for goodness sakes, blokes, stop bumping for... don't get me started on kicking around the corner in front of goal. That's a completely different kettle of fish. OK, it's the modern game. I don't want to be a silly old fart and not be up with what's happening. They want to kick around the corner. That's great. But how can you miss from directly in front? 15 out, Shea Bolton. Just remind me what the result of the game was again.
Yeah, draw. There you go, Shea. Nice. Al, just on that, I thought I was watching retro footy with the bums. I thought Byron Pickett was back just slicing blokes in half. What about the Shea Bolton one? The Chiefs just alluded to it. Like, the confidence to go, OK, I'm going to go in front 20 metres out, but I'm going to go around the corner and slaughter it.
Well, we know Shea, obviously, he's a super talented guy and, sometimes they have a bit of a licence to do what they like. But Bolton, since round 1 last year, has had 101 shots at goal, which is the 6th most in the AFL. But his accuracy is the 6th worst. So it's clearly something he needs to work on. Obviously, that one at the end, we all remember, there was a shot he had earlier in the game too, where he tried a banana from a set shot, and I think it hit the behind post on the full. If that had just snuck in for a behind, might have been handy in the end.
What about the Freo 5 flop, we'll call it, because we all expected Freo to come out and win, but he just had no impact. Did you? I'm surprised that wasn't part of your don't argue.
No, he will. Well, they've got to persist with him because they need him to play there. His days of being a dominant midfielder, when you consider the midfield they've got now, they don't need him there. They need him to have a presence up forward, which means he might have to work harder. He might have to just adapt his role a little bit, maybe come a little bit further up the ground. We'll give him some licence to get involved more, but they've got to persist with it.
He had 9 disposals and 6 clangers. No, well, I don't think I've ever seen Nat 5 play a game like that, and surely we won't see it again.
That was the average I used to get across there with clangers. Just with Ross the Boss, so 67 points got the job done. Al, I'm going to go to you, question without notice. He just loves sitting under 100 and winning games of footy. It won't go far for where the Saints need to be, but what did you think of the performance?
I think you just have to work with what you've got, and the Saints don't have much of a forward line at the moment, so you just have to give credit to their defence. Now, Freo last week had the most disposals of any team, but they scored the fewest points, so that probably tells you a little bit about what they're doing. They maybe need to have a look at themselves, but credit to Ross and the Saints backline.
Let's be honest, it was a snore fest.
It was a snore fest.
I mean, great if you're a St Kilda supporter, you'd be happy that you got the win on the board, but oh boy, if you were looking for some sleep, it was a great way to get it.
So what's the brand, Al, going forward? Are we going to see the Collingwoods of the world, the offence? Because there wasn't a lot of defence played in the weekend other than the Freo Saints game.
Well, the teams that I think are going to challenge are the ones who move the ball quick. And yeah, exactly as you say, the Collingwoods of the world, even Carlton and Richmond a little bit, although they were pretty scrappy. But Geelong, Melbourne, I think that's the standard if you want to be playing finals, top 4.
Didn't you see the Hawks' defence on the weekend?
I wasn't going to go there, but if we have to.
Oh, that was bad.
I don't mind the babies. They're playing an under-18 team, which is fine. But it's the effort which really annoys you because Essendon just walked through. So can Sam in week 2 turn it around? Because that's a big thing for a young player playing list to be able to go, right, OK, we've got to switch on our defence. Just can't turn it on like that.
No, they were witches' hats on the weekend. So expecting better this week, please.
What do you think, Al?
Well, and the interesting thing is watching the Bombers. I mean, they obviously a great start for them, and they've got a decent draw early doors, but they played a very sort of keepings off, chip it around style, which is different to those, those top end contenders, I think. But we'll see how it looks maybe against Gold Coast this week.
All right, well, that's a cracking start to the Dunstall Don't Argue segment. The Pies have flipped the script. They beat the reigning premier, and suddenly some commentators are saying they can win the flag. Not me.
I beg your pardon?
Not me.
You don't think they're a live hope? Given the brand they played last year and the way they've started already, you don't think they can contend?
I think I've still got Melbourne and Geelong a long way ahead of any other team.
A long way, so they're not in the picture.
Not in my picture at the moment.
Not in the picture, Al. Can you believe that?
They've still got to prove
They just beat
to me.
Geelong, didn't they?
They just beat Geelong, but I'm still back in Melbourne and Geelong in.
You know,
that's nice just to clip me off the top once again, Chief. Can they beat the Power this weekend?
They can. I love the brand of football that they're playing. What gets me, Al, is the speed with which they hurt opposition teams, particularly when they create a turnover and intercept possession. They just go bang and they're scoring at will.
Yeah, and the way they use the ball was what really stood out last week. And, you know, we know Nick Dacos, one of the most exciting young players in the competition, had 35 touches last week at 91%. Efficiency. So the question is, will other teams let him run free like that? And last year, Port Adelaide actually was the best team in the comp at restricting opposition running defenders. So I think you might find it a little bit tougher this weekend, but I still like the Pies at the MCG.
Exciting offensive team, no doubt. Jeremy Howe, massive out in terms of the intercepts.
He is, and you don't replace a massive Jeremy Howe, a massive loss like that. So he didn't dominate on the weekend to the point where he got injured. So I think they'll manage to hold down while he's out, but we shouldn't underestimate what Port Adelaide did first up. I mean, they were probably long overdue, but that's the sort of football we've expected for years and haven't really seen. Can they do it week in, week out? Well, we get a better test this week.
And Nick Dacos didn't drop off?
No, and Jason Horne-Francis is kind of the equivalent, I guess, at Port. Like, just super exciting debut. He just ripped the game away from Brisbane in the third quarter, just with all those centre clearances. So really looking forward to seeing how he goes at the G.
All right, that's three of us siding with Craig McRae's men. It's the tale of two coaches. Ross Lyon masterminded a round one fairy tale, and Luke Beveridge had a nightmare. On Saturday night, the Bulldogs host the Saints. Chief, are we expecting Ross the boss to back it up?
Well, he'll try. I wouldn't be confident about the Saints winning this one. I think the Bulldogs need to bounce back. They've got a little bit more class, on paper at least. We don't know how they're going to play. I think they'll play better than they did last week, and I expect them to beat the Saints. Al, what about you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we talked about Ross Lyon and how he was able to restrict the Freo forward line, and we'll see how the Bulldogs forward line functions this week. It didn't really work against the D's with all those.
It was never going to, mate. Let's be brutally honest.
How big a loss? Lob and, I mean, Liam Jones will probably still play, but he's
the Saints we talked about, they don't have a heap of tall forwards, so, I mean, it's not the worst thing for them to just restructure up and try maybe a little bit smaller in the forward line there, and we'll see how the Saints back line goes against that. But I think the class in the midfield, Bontempelli, McRae's had 25 disposals in his last 8 games against the Bulldogs, so I think there's enough class in there through the middle to give the Doggies a win here.
Surely, Dicko, kicking 10 or 11 goals a week is not sustainable for winning games.
Wouldn't have
you
thought.
might stifle some of the poorer teams, but the good teams will pick their way through, and you're just not going to be competitive.
And the Bulldogs are one of those teams. So when they turn it on, they can get through and cut you open pretty quick. So from that perspective, this is going to be his biggest test, isn't it, Al?
Well, I'm looking at another, we talked about McRae. Bontempelli, obviously a superstar, kicked 6 goals in his last 2 games against the Saints. So goal-kicking mids might be an issue for him.
All right, there we have it. We're against Ross this week. We were against him last week too, so we're really on Ross. We're on your side.
He's probably happy.
He's very happy, but we're expecting the Bulldogs to bounce back in this one.
Footy is life. It's loyalty, rivalry, love and pain. Footy is everything. That's why we've made a betting brand for footy fans. That's better. Gamble responsibly.
We were all chips in with Will Ashcroft to win the Rising Star, but did we underestimate Harry Sheezel? Al, tell me, at least with your SuperCoach, you had him in as your captain, surely.
You stitched me up here, and Clarko stitched me up because he named him in a forward pocket, and I thought that he could struggle to get the ball down there. But, of course, lining up at half-back, he was an absolute revelation. 34 disposals, over 600 metres gained. He was just sensational.
We did that. Don't know, what did you have in your first game?
Didn't have a lot of ball. Kicked 3, but didn't have a lot of ball.
Yeah, I had 1 handball and it was a good one. Just in regard to some history you mentioned, Greg Williams back in 1984, 38 touches. Dean Gregg, 39
the
touches
most
in 91,
Yeah.
39 in your first game. But
That's
off
weird,
halfback,
isn't it?
we did the game. He was super impressive.
He was. It's interesting. Halfback seems to be a great place to learn the caper and to cut your teeth. And we're seeing how effective Nick Dacos has been at Collingwood. And maybe that's the blueprint for some of these clever young players coming in, because all of a sudden when you're thrown into the pressure cooker in the middle, it can be a little bit harder. There's more traffic. It's a lot more contested ball there where you can read the play at halfback. And he's a really good user, so he sort of sets things up for them.
What about Will Ashcroft? Let's talk about him quickly.
Well, he was thrown into the cauldron a bit, and I just think probably, first game cut him some slack when you consider that Lachie Neale, Josh Dunkley, they didn't do a lot to help him once Port took control of that game. But the other player you would have seen in that North West Coast game was Ruben Ginbey for the Eagles, 12 tackles, number one for the AFL in round one on debut. He was in the guts, and he's... it might be a tough year for them, but they found one there.
I wouldn't drop off Ashcroft just yet. 13 possessions and a goal, but there's still touches of class every time he's around the footy.
And what about Essendon supporters, Alan Davey Jr.?
Yeah, lots to get excited about there. He could have kicked a couple more, so yeah, I like him.
All right, it's going to be a fascinating watch to see how Will Ashcroft performs this weekend against the Demons. It's round two, tipping time, and gents, it's fair to say that we need to lift our game after week one.
Lift?
We need to lift.
I was at home curled up in the fetal position at the end of round one. It was dreadful.
You were on fire on Sunday, 0-3. Yeah, in tipping machine he is. All right, Al, set us on the right path with this one, because you tipped 6 last week, and we're going to kick you off
the draw?
with the
No,
Lions.
you can't count it.
Did you pick the draw? No, I was just joking. Your crystal ball's not that good. But the Lions take on the Demons at the Gabba. Massive game for the Lions to get their first win.
Well, they've won 20 of their last 23 at the Gabba, but if we remember round 23 last year, Melbourne did them by 58 points up there. So I really like the D's. They've just started in absolute red-hot form. Max Gorn was unbelievable. And I think Brisbane, their connection with their forward line still needs work. Last week, Eric Hipwood took 2 marks, Danaher took 3 marks, and you look at the other side for the Demons, Jake Lever took 9. So, he's just an absolute genius at getting in the right spot to cut off those forward moves. So if Brisbane can't get past him, I don't think they can win.
Can I just say this? And I'm bullish about Melbourne, and I've tipped them in this game, but not with great confidence. Beware the round one aberration. Teams will bounce back, and I expect Brisbane to be a hell of a lot better.
Well, you're bullish on Brisbane to be right up there for the premiership this year.
Right.
Yeah, good start.
No, not great.
Yeah, great. Clark,
0-2 is not great either.
Let's know. Clarko had a dream start with the Kangaroos, obviously saluting in his first game as coach, but he's got a massive one, probably the toughest test to fly over to the West, take on the Dockers. Chief?
They need to. Look, they chip the ball around, the Dockers. I don't know. That's not Justin Longmuir's game plan. That wouldn't be what he was hoping they would do, but they just didn't have any dare going forward. They couldn't identify their forward targets to start with. So, whether it's a Taberner or a Fife or whoever they can get up forward to start being a better target, they've got to give them opportunities. But just playing slow possession footy is not what the Dockers need, and I'm sure they'll be very different this week.
Well, this is probably the perfect opportunity for them to bounce back. They've won their last 4 against North by an average of 69 points, and one to watch too is that Sean Darcy in the ruck last year just annihilated Todd Goldstein, and he'll have to come back in this week with Cherry out. So, I expect him to have a massive game. Yeah,
and it's good that you acknowledge my pre-game prediction. Nick Larkey, 6 goals. He kicked 6 goals. Where's my pat on the back?
When did you say that?
Oh, yeah, you've forgotten already. All right, look out, Bombers. Army, they'll be up and about after their round 1 win against the Hawks. They take on the Suns on Sunday. Chief, can Brad Scott back it up?
Well, Al made the comment earlier, they've got a good early draw. So they've got a great chance to get their confidence. They could be 3-0, 4-0. You just don't know because of the draw they've got. Do I rate them as that sort of team? Not yet, but the draw has conspired to give them a really good start to the season. But they're going to get a stiffer test than they did last week, regardless of who they're playing. And the Suns will be a bit fired up too because they were drubbed last week by the Swans.
Yeah, no, they were no good. But I've gone into the rabbit hole a bit here, guys, because it's been going around a stat this week that every team that's been on top of the ladder after round 1 for the past 15 years has gone on to play finals.
Yep.
So Bombers fans are clinging to that. If you go back into their history, over the entire history of the club, they've been on top of the ladder after round 1 20 times. 16 out of those they've played finals, and 7 of them they've gone on to win the premiership. So something there for Bombers fans maybe. I don't know if it helps us this week with our tips, but I think they can beat Gold Coast.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to pop the bubble just yet.
Rabbit hole.
How many days has it been since they won a final? I mean, they're all counting.
It's about 6,700.
Wow, that's massive. Stuart Dew, big pressure. in this one. They were deplorable round one, and this is a massive test. In his 6th year, I mean, you can't turn the cooker up on him in round 2, but if he loses this one, they're up against it.
No, I hear you. It's going to be a tough battle for them. I mean, they've got some great names in the midfield, but I look at that lineup. I don't think they've improved this year, put it that way, on paper and the resources that they've got. So if they don't start fighting their best football, they're going to have a tough season.
What do you think?
Essendon has never lost to Gold Coast at Marvel, and I don't think that'll change this weekend.
That's why he's the stats guru. He just throws these little nuggets out left, right and centre. OK, there you have it. Let's have a look at some of the other games in round 2. We're all tipping the Tigers and the Swans to win, but Jason is alone with the Eagles.
Well, I just think the Giants had a great win. It would have taken a lot out of them. They've lost a couple of key movers through the HIA protocols with Kelly and Whitfield out. The Eagles were terrible. Now Giants have got to travel over to Perth. I don't rate the Giants in 2023. I don't rate the Eagles either. But I just think they might sneak with one. And I've got to play catch up already after round 1.
And when we're doing our tips, can you not reply all? Just send it to the producers because we
You
tipped
just copy
exactly the same. You copied my tips, Al.
I think mine were in first, weren't
Yeah, they were.
I'm hot as a pistol because I'm going for 9 straight this week. Thanks, Chief. Thanks,
Pleasure.
Al. Outstanding. Thanks for joining us on Fox Sports Lab AFL. Make sure you subscribe below and follow us on socials, and we'll see you next week.
Footy is life. It's loyalty, rivalry, love and pain. Footy is everything. That's why we've made a betting brand for footy fans. That's better. Gamble responsibly.